We're just a few days away from the White House imposing a possible 5% tariff on all Mexican imports. I'm Mark Liverman with what has to happen to avoid it.
While many have been the victim of trailhead break-ins, there has been some progress in the form of arrests. I'm Cody Boyer with the latest details.
6:30 on this Friday. Chet Lehman, Missy O'Malley with you. We'll have Cody's story.
He's kind of like Dora the Explorer.
That's right.
We'll just send him out wherever he goes.
Backpack. We'll find out in just a few minutes. Meantime, our top national story at 6:31. Barring a breakthrough in negotiations today, the White House will still move ahead with a plan to impose tariffs on Mexican imports.
Now, this is despite reports of progress being made by the negotiators from the two countries. Mark Liverman reports.
2 days of talks between the U.S. and Mexico have yielded significant concessions, but not enough to stop the White House from going ahead with a planned 5% tariff on all goods imported from Mexico.
Tariffs are a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful word if you know how to use them properly.
With time running out and with opposition to the policy growing on Capitol Hill, President Trump appeared on Fox News to defend the administration's approach.
I have senators and others and Pelosi coming out saying, oh, how horrible. What they're doing is they're hurting a deal. They should be saying, we're with the president, we'll do whatever he wants to do, and Mexico would fold like an umbrella. Now I have these people, and I'm saying there's some Republicans too. I think they should be ashamed of themselves.
The White House is using the threat of tariffs to pressure Mexico to do more to halt the flow of Central American migrants into the U.S. But many in Congress are pushing back, saying the move would hurt Americans. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee says he'll introduce a resolution of disapproval to block the tariffs, saying commandeering U.S. trade policy to influence border security is an abuse of power. Mexico pledged to deploy 6,000 troops to its border with Guatemala. The White House said that wasn't enough. CBS News has learned the two sides are discussing a change to the asylum policy so that migrants traveling through Mexico would apply for asylum there first. An administration source described that as encouraging. Mark Liverman, CBS News, New York.
Now, if no deal is reached, the White House will impose a 5% tariff on Mexican imports as of Monday. The fee could rise as high as 25% by the end of the year.
6:33 now. Meteorologist Matt Owell steps in to join us. When I came to work this morning, a little bit of rain, just kind of a mist in Belgrade. Maybe the shape of things to come for the next couple of days.
It is. We've got some light rain falling out on the Billion Auto Weather patio this morning. It's not particularly heavy, but it is going to increase in intensity as we head through the morning in that cold front.
You're going to get wet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. Temperatures into the 40s this morning. You can see that moisture trying to work its way through here. It's not particularly heavy. I don't think that we're going to see a ton. Initially, the heaviest rain expected into the afternoon. Our temperatures will continue to drop as we get later into the day. It's just going to be a cool, wet day ahead. We'll talk more about that coming up here in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. 6:33 on this Friday. A sad story to pass along here this morning. A wreck involving a military vehicle claimed the life of one West Point military cadet, injured 21 other people.
The crash happened early Thursday morning near an academy training site. Camilla Bernal has more on this deadly accident.
A West Point training turned deadly when a military vehicle rolled over, killing one cadet.
Today was a tragic day for the West Point community in our United States Army.
Two soldiers were driving a troop vehicle with 20 cadets inside to the Camp Natural Bridge training site.
The cadets were involved in a standard training exercise that occurs as a part of their military training program here at West Point.
The accident highlighting a shocking trend. More U.S. troops are dying in training incidents than in combat operations. In 2017 alone, nearly 4 times as many service members died in training as were killed in combat, according to a government report. But officials say the training exercises provide practical experience.
We want to make sure that our soldiers and our cadets train in realistic training environment. So this is part of our realistic training.
The incident involved a light-medium tactical vehicle typically used to provide help during natural disasters like floods or wildfires.
It is not common for these vehicles to turn over.
When you're dealing with heavy equipment, when you're dealing with people learning how to use it, accidents happen, even with the best leadership and the best intention.
An investigation into what caused the accident is underway.
This is the United States Army. We're strong. We're strong here at West Point. The community has come together very nicely.
Oh, so sad there. Sad
Absolutely
story to
true.
pass along. Let's switch gears back to politics.
Yep.
It is official now. Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte is running for governor of Montana in 2020.
Congressman Gianforte filed his fundraising paperwork yesterday with the State Political Practices Office. He will formally kick off his campaign late next week in conjunction with the State Republican Party convention in Helena. MTN News first reported last week that Gianforte would be running for governor. Gianforte is the fourth Republican to join the 2020 race for Montana's governorship, which is open seat because Democrat Steve Bullock is barred by term limits from running again.
And Gianforte's entry into the governor's race also means that Montana's only U.S. House seat will be open and up for grabs next year. In other news, Gallatin County Sheriff's deputies have made several arrests connected to some of the trailhead break-ins across the valley.
U.S. Forest Service is working with them to help the public prevent them from happening again. Dan's Cody Boyer has the details.
Both the U.S. Forest Service and the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office say that there have been a number of break-ins since the wintertime, and now they are also saying there have been a number of arrests connected to those cases. A lot of information, they say, in terms of knowing what to do to prevent it, can go a long way.
We have had some closures and arrests with folks involved in those.
That's a sign. Progress is being made on cases like this that happen at the Kirk Hill Trailhead. That being said, the U.S. Forest Service and deputies across the county are still on the lookout with an uneasy eye.
The trailhead break-ins that we've had, based on the number that has been reported recently to us, we actually haven't seen an increase in the typical numbers that are reported. However, it does appear to be a bit more visible right now.
It's easy to get lost in the beauty of the nature of many of these trails, but that's also part of the catch. When you get up one of these trails far enough, you can lose sight of the trailhead and lose sight of your vehicle. So stowing your items wherever you can could go a long way to stop thieves.
Think about what it is that you do and don't need. Take a moment to stow those valuables.
The Forest Service adds that locking your doors and sharing their caution also make a difference. Yet, Sheriff Brian Gutkin says thieves will still try.
This time of year, we see a lot more activity at the trailheads. Therefore, unfortunately, there's more criminal mischief and thefts.
If you see something, say something.
Also, a good idea, hiding your things away from the parking lot.
Not doing it while you're sitting at the trailhead. Do it before you get to the trailhead. So if someone's in the area watching, being able to take those steps prior to even getting to the trailhead can really help.
Both say don't let this stop you. Come prepared. That way, the trails can still be all yours to explore.
We'll be looking for those people too, and if we can catch them, we will, but be safe.
Prosecution for these cases is being sought right now, but when it comes to stopping future events like this from happening, the U.S. Forest Service says, see something, say something. In Bozeman, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Now, other news also closer to home, following up on the shelter-in-place incident at the Belgrade High School. We now know that the 4 students and an 18-year-old man were charged with felonies following a video threat that was posted to social media. The next question is, how will those 4 kids be punished? According to Belgrade Police, the 4 were all charged with felony intimidation. The students are expected to be referred to Gallatin County Youth Probation officers, and it's up to those officers to either deal with the students through probation or send a referral to the county attorney, who could move the case forward to a youth court judge. David Oster was charged with tampering with evidence and could face up to 10 years in prison in his part of this incident.
Mining City headlines this morning. Butte-Silver Bow's Council of Commissioners yesterday voted in support of the Environmental Protection Agency's cleanup plan for Butte. Panel voted 10-1 to accept the proposed plan that outlines the cleanup of mine waste that runs along a portion of Blacktail and Silver Bow Creek. Massive project expected to be completed by 2023, but after that, Butte would be taken off the Superfund list site.